Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 4 and see how this particular iPhone holds up in 2025. Now, here's the thing about the iPhone 4. This is one of those iPhones that came out a long time ago. It is a fairly older type of device, as you can probably imagine. And I will say, in some ways, this is an iPhone that, does kind of have its own type of history to it. I think it's very interesting. But this is easily one of those types of devices that I would not recommend a single person to go ahead and buy anymore. Unless you're going to buy this iPhone as a collector's item, there are way more iPhones I'd recommend buying than this thing. This iPhone's not really even that usable anymore because it's outdated with software, and I really wouldn't recommend anyone to put their personal information inside of this phone anymore, because it's going to run into a lot of problems when it comes down to it from that side. So if you do want to pick up some iPhones that I would recommend buying this year though, links will be down in the description below. You can get that from there, and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of these particular iPhones. With the iPhone 4, this iPhone, like I mentioned before, came out quite a bit of time ago. So it is a fairly older type of device, right? It is a substantially older type of iPhone, so you're just going to have to kind of keep that in mind. Within this type of iPhone, you're going to be getting, on the front, a 3.5-inch display. So this right there is already going to be kind of a pretty old type of device when it comes down to it. So you're already going to be getting somewhat of an older type of styling of an iPhone just already when it comes out to it. So I kind of hate for you to go through and buy an iPhone like this when there are already better types of devices to go and buy. So that right there is already kind of an issue. This thing's panel is already outdated. It's giving you pretty big bezels on the top and the bottom. Home button on the front, this is kind of an older styling of a device, as you can imagine. And like I said before, I would just hate for you to go through and buy an iPhone like this if it's already outdated. And this thing's panel at this time is a little outdated. But when it first came out, this was actually a very big upgrade coming from the iPhone 3GS. You have to remember, this was the first iPhone that brought this big of a redesign. This is easily still one of the biggest types of upgrades that we've seen from one iPhone to the other. And that right there was such a big, insane difference. Imagine being able to go through and buy an iPhone like this, and it's going to be giving you this type of capability. I genuinely do think for a lot of people out there, going from an iPhone 3GS to the 4 was probably one of the bigger type of upgrades we've seen in a very, at this point, it was probably the biggest iPhone upgrade of all time. So that right there is something very interesting kind of keep in mind there, just in and of itself. Now, another very important thing to keep in mind here was that this iPhone was one of the last iPhones to have that 30-pin connector. The 4S was technically the last one, but this one also kind of had it too. So that right there was another really interesting thing to kind of keep in mind there as well. On top of that, I will still tell you, in my personal opinion, this type of device still looks pretty decent. It still feels very expensive, which is something that's very important. Headphone jack on this iPhone as well. You're also able to still go through and still get pretty good capability when it comes down to the outside and the way this iPhone feels, because it still feels and looks like a pretty good iPhone. On the backside, standard glass back. This was the first iPhone we've ever gotten with a glass back on the backside. So this, again, in and of itself was another one of these really cool things to basically have. It's not every day that we get this type of capability, but we essentially got this type of layout inside of this type of device. And I do think this in and of itself was another one of those really cool things to kind of keep in mind here within this type of phone. Because you're able to still maintain a really good build quality inside of this phone. It still looks pretty good, it still feels very good. And like I said before, I do think this in and of itself was another one of those really cool things to kind of keep in mind here in and of itself. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there for the most part as well. Now, on top of that, another very important thing to keep in mind here too is the fact that the iPhone 4 was basically giving you a single camera setup on the backside and a front-facing camera. This was actually the first iPhone ever to give us a front-facing camera. And once again, this was a really big upgrade for the most part. Being able to go through and pick up an iPhone that's going to be giving us this type of layout. It's so funny because majority of phones that we have nowadays still have these types of camera layouts, and this in and of itself was another really cool thing to kind of keep in mind here as well. So I liked being able to go through and get these types of devices because they were able to go through and give you this type of layout. Again, this type of device doesn't really look the best. It's essentially going to be a little bit of an outdated type of device, as you can probably imagine, I'm going to be honest with you. But I'll still probably tell you, if you're going to be able to go through, get a phone although this camera really is not that great anymore, it's going to be a fairly, stranger type of device when it comes down to it. I'll still kind of think about this type of phone every once in a while because I do think for the most part, it is actually a pretty good priced phone. Like, it was a good priced phone when it first came out for how much capability was coming within this device. Again, this would not be a phone I'd recommend anyone to buy anymore, but still, there's still some capability behind this type of phone when it comes down to it. So I would probably tell you from that side, that kind of covers it up there as well. Now, when it comes down to software longevity, this is probably the biggest downside of this type of device when it comes down to it. When you're going through and buying a phone like this, it really just does not make any sense at all to go ahead and buy this type of device anymore. When it comes down to the software longevity, this phone is already outdated with software, and it's been outdated with software for so many years now. So because of that, it just doesn't make any sense to go ahead and buy this type of device. There are substantially better devices to go and buy rather than this one. And like I said before, I think if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, again, you're going to have a really hard time buying a device that's going to be of this quality and caliber, and it's essentially going to be of this type of layout, and, it's not really getting software updates anymore. So there's not really that big of a reason, it's not really that big of a point to buy this device anymore when there's going to be way better options out there. So I would probably tell you from that particular side, again, that is another one of those really important things to keep in mind. And if you're going to go through and pick up a device, this is easily one of the more important things to keep in mind at the end of the day. So that right there, there's not really too much else to say. The battery life of this phone also is really not that good anymore either. This device is going to be running into a lot of issues when it comes down to the battery. It's going to be a much stranger type of battery. It's not going to hold up that well either. And like I said before, this is going to be one of those types of problems that you're always kind of going to run into, right? Because the battery life is just not going to be that great. So there wouldn't really be that big of a reason to go through and buy this type of device anymore simply because of that particular reason. So I personally think in and of itself, again, that's another one of those really important things to keep in mind here too. So in my personal opinion, the performance of this phone is something that's also very interesting, because this performance of this phone, again, really is not that great. You're going to run into some problems here and there. At the time though, it was actually a good upgrade coming from the iPhone 4, but I can't recall the performance being the first thing people would look at as being the biggest thing going on for this type of device, or the main reason why somebody would go ahead and buy this type of phone. I think for the most part, you're going to be able to go and buy a device here that's still going to be giving you a pretty decent type of layout, but you're just going to have to remember that within this type of phone, it is going to be a little bit of a smaller, slower type of device. The biggest thing I can probably tell you, right, is that for the most part, it genuinely just doesn't make any sense at all for anyone to go ahead and buy any of these types of phones. The iPhone 4 is a way older phone. You're going to be getting lots of issues, little tiny problems here and there that just don't make a lot of sense for anyone to basically run into. And it's going to be a slower type of device, right? That's essentially the main problem you're going to be running into here. And I just don't think it really makes a lot of sense for anyone to go ahead and buy these types of devices. It makes a lot more sense to go and buy an iPhone that is still supported with software. So you're going to have to think of iPhones like an iPhone, like iPhone XS or above, right? I would not recommend going below an iPhone XS. The iPhone XS and above are the ones I would recommend buying. Beyond that, it really kind of comes down to how much more money can you spend. If you can spend a little bit more, I'd recommend buying an iPhone 12 or an iPhone 13 Pro. Those ones are the better ones I'd recommend. Beyond that, I really don't think it makes a lot of sense to go and buy these types of devices. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there too. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.